These are the four scenes as they looked like on the evening of the 17th of May 1974 after the bombings, the three synchronised car bombings in Dublin and the one hit-and-run car bomb in Monaghan. 10 died in Parnell Street, 15 in Talbot Street, 2 in South Leinster Street and 7 in Monaghan. In this particular video, I'm looking specifically at the expertise that we can call on and which is well recorded in relation to the quality of the explosives used and the general methodology employed in order to achieve that. And any other technical aspect of the bombing that gives us some indication as to the origin of the bombers and their general expertise. The Ulster Volunteer Force in 1993, after the Hidden Hand documentary was broadcast, admitted, in inverted commas, their sole responsibility for the bombings. One has to take that with a great deal of skepticism, and some of the reasons we will discuss here is A, they had not the proven capacity to launch the Dublin type bombing. They had no history of synchronized car bombings. As a matter of fact, they were bunglers, as was evidenced by the attack on the Miami show band in 1975 and many other instances of their lack of competence, even though that they had no scruples about killing, and because most of their bombs, if not all, were no warning bombs. On screen, you would see the photographs of two British Army officers who served in Belfast and Northern Ireland around that time. On the left is Lieutenant Colonel George Stiles, and on the right is Lieutenant Colonel Nigel Wylde. George Stiles was first in Belfast at the start of the 70s, and he was succeeded by Nigel Wylde, both Lieutenant Colonels in the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, so both experts in their field. In 1993, for the Hidden Hand Yorkshire television documentary, George Stiles was interviewed. And in the course of that, he was asked about the capacity of the loyalists, in particular the Ulster Volunteer Force, to produce these kind of bombings as in Dublin. And he frankly scoffed at the idea. On screen, and we have the video of his interview with the Hidden Hand. He laughed at the idea that the UVF had that kind of capacity. He was totally dismissive. And indeed, Nigel Wylde subsequently and later was of the same view. But he did say something else which was quite remarkable in answer to a question he was asked by the interview. Is it possible that the British Army were letting off explosions in the north using captured IRA explosives? Is it possible that the British Army in the north were setting off explosives using captured explosions using captured IRA explosives? And George Stiles said, yes, if I was asked to set off a bang, I think as George put it, yeah, it would have no problem in doing that for a good operational reason, i.e., it would be possible to search and do any kind of follow-up that might have been more difficult to insert one's military into, other than if they were there in the guise of responding to a bomb explosion. And in all of those cases, he was very clear they would use captured IRA explosives. They would use captured IRA explosives. And that's quite a remarkable statement in itself. But as again, one looks at the Hidden Hand video, it is very clear that this is exactly what George Stiles said. Obviously, in any forensic follow-up to any of those bomb expeditions, it would always appear that the explosives were of a particular kind. The signature of the IRA, and more particularly the signature of the provisional IRA on it. It's useful to sort of consider for a moment what kind of explosives were the provisional IRA producing at the time. Up to 1973, they were producing a homemade mix, which we will call ANFO. And I'm going to call it ANFO 1 just for the sake of of clarity. And that was a mix of ammonium nitrate and fuel oil, and through a process it could be turned into an explosive. The authorities in Britain and in Ireland then decided that the ammonium nitrate, which was contained in normal fertilizer used for farming, etc., that would be reduced in content to make it less easy to extract for use in homemade explosives. The Provisional IRA were the first to crack that particular conundrum, and possibly the only one. And they produced a new version of that older product, which lets us call N42 for want of a better word. And in that was a quite unique homemade explosive. It was a high explosive and different from the previous version, from the version 1. It didn't have to be contained in a metal container in order to make it explode. It didn't have to be contained in a metal container, a barrel or a gas cylinder, something of that nature. That was the situation up to that particular point. Now, Nigel Wylde has made it very, very clear in his information that the Ulster Volunteer Force certainly didn't have that expertise in 1974 and may not have ever acquired that expertise. So it was a unique provisional IRA phenomena at that particular time. The other matter that Colonel Wylde mentioned, which is of extreme importance, particularly keeping in mind what George Stiles had said about setting off explosions using captured IRA material. He said that at his time in Belfast, in his brigade area in Belfast, they were recovering 1,000 pounds of this homemade explosives every week. 1,000 pounds. And there was 2 other brigade areas in the north, British Army brigade areas, and they were recovering similar amounts. He then made a very clear statement. We did not keep a record. There was no ledgers of either acquisition or disposition of this explosive. And that is a remarkable situation. Raises the possibility, or more than the possibility, the probability, that it would have been relatively easy for some of those explosives to find their way to the counter gangs, the Ulster Volunteer Force, and indeed any other loyalist organization as well. So and the evidence of both of these 2 military experts, in my respectful view, were never given the kind of credence they should have been given in any subsequent inquiries in the South. Because taken collectively, but also with other information that we're not discussing in this short video in relation to collusion and all of that other background, it provided the South, if people were prepared to listen and to approach it from a deductive and thoughtful point of view, it gave a very clear indication as to how the Dublin aspect of the bombings were provided and who provided them. But it is as clear as crystal from the evidence of both of these officers that the UVF did not have that capacity in 1974. And indeed, that's a viewpoint that's shared by an Irish military explosives ordnance officer, Commandant Paddy Traers, who was of the same view. So this is very stark information and very, very important. Obviously, there are many different components that go into making up a bomb, and certainly the improvised explosives require a particular kind of application as well. Now, within that scheme of things, of the different elements that go into the bomb, the technical elements, is the need for a timer, a very good timing device. And in this case, in the Dublin bombings, it was obviously a specialized military type timer. Why? Because it allowed 3 cars to be placed into the center of the city and to explode within 3 to 4 minutes. That is a unique type of timing. Again, never repeated by any of the terrorist organizations up to that particular point or subsequently. The Provisional IRA devised some very elaborate devices and electronic devices and something they called timing power units that were used for many years in bombs and so on. But no one had ever managed to explode 3 car bombs or three bombs within such a short period of time, full stop. It hadn't happened. So the best advice is that what was used in the Dublin attack was a specialized military type timing device that allowed the bombs to be placed, allowed the perpetrators to escape, and then to cause the explosions to occur almost simultaneously. A unique technical achievement.